Welcome back, GM Sprinkles here with another video. Today we're going to be discussing how I create a campaign. This is going to be the third part of a video series that I've been working on, which is creating a campaign in general. Those who've watched my previous two videos may be thinking that these videos on how to create a campaign are more aimed for DMs or GMs. However, I would suggest reconsidering that stance. Just purely and simply, we need more DMs and more GMs. It's a great way to go from player to DM. Now, before I get onto the topic, I would like to just say that this isn't necessarily for D&D or anything in particular. You could use this advice for any world building or any RPG game that you're playing or creating. Alright, let's get on with the topic. So first thing I like to do before I start creating anything in my campaign is come up with an idea that my campaign will be based around. And before I get planning anything or get too in depth with my idea, I like to have a rough idea so I can pitch that to one of my groups, my players. If I can pitch that to them and they seem on board and seems like they'll be interested, then I go ahead with the planning. Because it's really important to know your players, and if you're going to have something really heavy and intrigue and the players that you play with are all about combat, I would suggest maybe thinking of a different campaign idea or finding a different group that would be more suitable for that intrigue. Once I find the right group of players for my campaign, I begin to start working on the focus of the campaign. Now, I did speak about this in my previous videos, that when I talk about focus, I'm talking about whether I want it to be more social encounters like intrigue, or whether I want more combat-based, more exploration. Now, this obviously depends on the group of players you have, and make sure that you are upfront with your players and let them know what type of thing you're looking at doing. Also, something that I do know some DMs may forget, and I have seen this before, is that at the end of the day, your players are the focus of your story. It is not just about you, and it's not just about the players. It is a collaborative effort, and we do need to make sure that we are focusing on the players and not the DM's world or characters. Because at the end of the day, it is a world that we all need to have fun with, not just the players and not just the DM. Once I've got my idea and I'm ready to start expanding on it, it's time to do the world building. Now, in the past, I have started quite large, start with the world and work down, but I have found that quite overwhelming. I start small now and work upwards, so I always start with a location, whether it's a small town or a small village, and then work out what the people are like, work out what their gods are, and start slowly building bigger and bigger and bigger. So then you go country, and then continent, and then slowly build up until you can do your whole world. Now, sometimes this in-depth world building isn't necessary for your campaign, especially if you're writing something that's in a predetermined world and you're just looking at writing something in that determined world. You probably can just skip this step, but it is just important to make sure you start small and work bigger. I find that a lot better. Once that step's done, I like to move on to organize my plot points and my events that will happen throughout the campaign. Now, I organize events rather than a plot, because you never know what the players are going to get up to. That way you have events that will occur, and when they will occur, or whenever you feel like is best to interject them into the story. Now, I find this works much better than planning out the whole story and how this step leads to this step, and if they go to the tavern, then this happens. Otherwise, you just end up working out way too many plot ends that might not even ever happen. I like to put a lot of focus into the environment, so this way that your environment feels alive and the players can react to that living environment. An example of this is if you were starting in a city, you can have different parties and different factions who might be working against each other. And when the players interject with one of those parties, it may make an enemy and therefore create an event where that enemy will want to come back and work against the party. When I do plan my campaigns now, I only plan for the first few sessions or first session. I take it one session at a time and only plan what I need for that session. I also only plan what I don't want to improvise, because I do a lot of improvisation. This way, when I run it for my players, they do have the free roam to go whatever they want. I do believe that improvisation is very important to run a good campaign and to plan a campaign, because at the end of the day, your players are probably going to make decisions that you're not prepared for. And if that is the case, you can always just back that up with great improvisation and prepare to do that. Or even if you really need, I have sometimes had to say to the players they'll have a quick recess or quick break, so that way I can plan the next part. At the moment, I'm using an NPC deck from Monte Cook Games for the Cypher system, but this deck would really work for any campaign, and it just has a name, description of what they look like, a description on how they act, and a few little features about an NPC. And this is a really good way to get your mind just flowing and get into an NPC, and you can make it your own and maybe change a little bit about their name. But I find this really helped me, because I used to really struggle with coming up with NPCs on the fly, especially coming up with names. Before I had my hands on that though, I did just use the Fantasy Name Generator app on my Android, and this works really well, and it's free, which is a big bonus as well. So I'd highly recommend having a look at that if you're not very good at names, because honestly, if you're like me, every third man is going to be Jimmy, because I am very bad with names. This seems to be as good point as any to talk about NPCs and how often they're just used to portray the party or very one-dimensional. Now this really bugs me, and I did mention in my previous videos, and if you haven't checked those out, I would highly recommend them. I'm definitely not biased. Don't worry, I'll wait. Okay, so NPCs quite often are used just to portray the party, or they're not used at all, and this really grinds my gears because if you have a really interesting NPCs, it can really make a beautiful story. I could talk about this for hours, but I will try and keep it brief. I love NPCs, and this is one of my favorite things about being a DM. You can have so many weird and zany NPCs, and it can really make a story come to life. And honestly, I love an NPC that's believable, goes through character arcs, has character development, has flaws. And this is just good advice for any character, no matter whether you're creating a playable character or whether you're writing a book. Make sure that your characters are believable and they have flaws. I see way too many characters or players come to the table with characters and like, this is Jim. See, bad at names, I warned you. This is Jim and he is the best at everything he's ever done. And that is so boring. But if it's Jim and he is really good at fighting, but he's afraid of mice, that's hilarious. He should be brave, but he's not. And that's just fascinating. I will be covering NPCs and characters and making them more believable in a later video. So if you haven't subscribed, please do, because they will be in the next couple of weeks. Got a bit off topic there, but I will try and bring it back to other things I do when planning my campaigns. And that is to never commit to a combat. Now when I say this, it seems a bit strange, but never commit to it, because if you do and you're committed and you've planned this out and made it super tactical, you're going to have a bias in making the players do that. And if they just want to have a way around that, you're going to railroad them into that. And that is a really bad experience. So that's why I never plan combat more than some guards will attack them. That way you're not attached. And if the players skirt around that combat, which can be really fun and great character moments, you're not going to be disappointed, and neither the players, or you're not going to force them to do something they don't want to do. If you're unsure how to start your campaign and you've been reading the Dungeon Master Guide from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or you've just been watching lots of YouTube videos about how to do it, you will notice that a lot of people will say start with a world-shaking event. This does work. I don't think it's a must, but it does make it a lot easier if you have a really big event, or even if it's just a town-shaking event, because it really brings the players together for a common cause, and it really helps there. Don't feel constrained to have a world-shaking event. I know in my most recent campaign, how I got the party together is literally just to have a fish merchant who was paying an exorbitant amount of money to help find his missing fish. This may have seemed a very boring and mundane quest, but as the players went through that, they realized that there was something bigger going on, and it did lead to hints to something that was going to happen later in the campaign, and it was a great opportunity to foreshadow, even with such a simple and mundane quest. So my most recent campaign is a Cypher system campaign, and going from D&D to Cypher was a little bit tricky because when it comes to currency, D&D is very straight, narrow, and simple, where Cypher doesn't really set up a currency. It just says that you can use prices from moderately to expensive to very expensive to cheap, and that's fine, except for I was trying to work out how I can convert that from D&D to Cypher. And this is the thing I did learn by doing this process, is that gold doesn't really matter, which may sound crazy to some of you who are watching, but it really doesn't, because most of the time what the players want are things that money can't usually buy anyway. I do have another player who is interested in a ship and getting things like that, but at the same time, I'm pretty happy just to hand wave that when they get to a point where they feel comfortable, they would have enough wealth to do that, just to say, yes, you have enough. And I don't think we need to be here tracking the nitty-gritty of how many gold we have or whatever it is called in your campaign. Once I have the world set up and I know where my plot is heading, I will start a session 0. And this is the greatest way for the players to get together and start planning their characters. I did get them to start planning their characters before my session 0, and this probably wasn't the greatest thing I did. So next time I do a campaign, I am going to be running a session 0 and going through the world then. That way it's a great opportunity to create the world and show off the lore that they would know, or things that are important to character creation, as well as creating backstories where the players can create connections in their backstories so they know each other. I wish I did this in my most recent campaign, and I will be doing this more from now on, because otherwise, if they don't know each other, it just seems a bit odd to have these random people all of a sudden wanting to work together, and it feels a bit strange and just forced in the story. If you do have the players there working on their backstories with you, it's a great opportunity for you to intertwine their goals with another player's goals, or even create conflict by making one goal is an opposite to what another player wants to achieve, and this is great for character drama. I also let the players, or help the players, create secrets that they know about the world that others may not, and the other players should not know. That way it gives them something that the other players don't know, and it's a really fun experience. And it does have that extra bit of lore, which can be used against the party, or it can be used to help them at later on. When I run my Session Zeros, I like to have some sort of encounter, even if it's just a bar brawl, or a mini side quest. That way, when the players have gone through all the effort of creating their characters, they actually do get to roll some dice and actually do a little bit of role-playing and playing the game that they've been thinking so much about. Don't really want to learn this, but it is a mindset that I'm getting into now, is that it's not DM versus player. And the DM isn't a god, isn't an enemy, isn't a villain. The DM is the world, or if you prefer GM, then the GM is the world. And this is the way I think of it now, is that I, the GM, I am the world, I am the wind, I am the rain, I am the environment. I don't want to necessarily kill my players, but I may accidentally kill them because I am as wild as a world is. And in my opinion, that is how a GM should act. We aren't going to be out to kill the players, and our pieces of the world that we control aren't going to attack the players. They may attack the players, but it shouldn't be because we want to kill the players. It should be that, oh, the orcs are raiding this village, the players stop them, the orcs want revenge, they're going to kill the players. It should be reactions and actions and consequences. And that's how I feel our world works, and that's how a world should work in the game world as well. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and share to your friends. My Twitter is @SprinksDM, and you can follow me there for useful information, unuseful information, fun facts about the games I'm playing, RPG hooks, and just general opinions that I have on the TTRPG community. So that sounds like fun. Go ahead, follow me, links in description. If you have missed the previous 2 videos, I would suggest watching them, which will also be in the description. If there's anything that I failed to mention that you add in your campaigns and you think I should know, add that to the comments. I would love to hear it. Otherwise, if you have any feedback or what I should do my next video on, put that there as well, because I'd love your opinions.